It is Sunday, which means it is time for another Writing with Authors. As you can see, a beautiful day here in Tampa, Florida, and a rare evening recording for me. I am usually doing my recordings in the morning, but today we are traveling across the globe to interview someone who is very accomplished and, of course, a book that can improve your mental health. I have been working very hard to find authors who do both write and work towards breaking mental health stigma. And Nick Jonsson is here with a great episode. Welcome back to Writing with Authors. My name is Vincent A. Lancey, and you can learn more about me at vincentalancey.com or my handles on YouTube and social media, Vincent A. Lancey. International bestseller Nick Jonsson is here to discuss his book, Executive Loneliness: The 5 Pathways to Overcoming Isolation, Stress, Anxiety, and Depression in the Modern Business World. Now, I think this is a very important topic, especially with everything that's been going on with COVID. The professional workplace has been changed, but our mental health has all been affected. Here's a little preview to get us started. Part of being an executive is leading companies to success. As such, when an executive is experiencing extreme and prolonged stress, anxiety, isolation, and depression, what our guest is calling executive loneliness, they often do nothing to address it for the fear of appearing unsuccessful. In turn, not addressing it exacerbates the negative and difficult feelings to the point where it becomes more and more difficult for the person to function. It takes a toll on their whole life, both personal and professional. And this is the reason he knew that he was an executive who was trapped in executive loneliness for several years. In my brief stints in corporate, I have very similar feelings where I felt this loneliness. There was not a good company culture, embracing our mental health and putting our health first above all else, which is very important. I hope you're as excited as I am for this amazing guest, Nick Jonsson. Thank you so much for joining our show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Vincent. It's fantastic to be with you.
Likewise, would you mind giving a little preview to who Nick is before we dive all into book talk?
Definitely. So I was born in Sweden, but I lived and studied in Australia and Asia. The last 15 years, I lived mainly in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Singapore. And I worked as a senior executive myself, general manager for many multinational, international firms here being represented in Asia. So that's my career ladder. I have made a move recently in the last few years after a mental health crash, but that's what I will tell you more about today.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your openness and your courage to come on here, not only share your story, but to give others such a great book. I've worked so hard on my mental health books, Mr. Lancey Talks Mental Health, Mental Health Week, and now we have a guest introducing a brand new book. So without any more waiting, let's talk about this amazing book that you've written.
Sure. I mean, the book Executive Loneliness in itself, the reason I came up with the concept was that I was looking back at my own corporate career and I wish I had spoken up about my feelings internally. I wish I had the courage to go and tell my boss or to tell the HR department how I was feeling inside. Instead, I decided to keep it secret and silent inside me. So now when I left my corporate career a few years ago, and at the moment I'm working in a company where we do confidential peer groups for senior executives where they are discussing their work-related challenges. And attending these meetings, I started to understand that I was not alone. It was not only me who had all those feelings when I was working as an executive. I realized that they had them too. So what I did back in 2019 was to put together a survey, an anonymous survey, where I questioned the senior executives about their feelings in regards to stress, anxiety, and also depression. And I was quite shocked about the findings that came out of these surveys. And that was the foundation for then putting this book together.
Using your first-hand experience, I can't thank you enough, because as a career academic, I would love to be in school forever, but there is no replacing that first-hand experience because it's something you went through. And to everyone viewing on, remember, what works for some does not work for everyone. Between the two of us today, we're going to offer a lot of ways to improve your mental health. Did you always want to be a published author, become a writer, or was this something that just evolved?
This definitely was not my plan. It just happened so that because when the findings came out from this survey, it showed things such as that 30% of the senior executives surveyed were actually suffering from executive loneliness. those findings really stood out to me. And when I then took this to the local radio station, they put me on air right away. So there I wasn't really prepared. Boom, I was on radio. And then the next day was a 4-page feature where they had interviewed me in details about the survey, and word of mouth spread, and very quickly it went viral on internet. So before I knew it, I was surrounded by journalists who wanted to speak to me about the findings. And then during the pandemic, I also did the same survey in December 2020, and the number had doubled. At that time, 59% of the executives felt lonely in their jobs because they were also working then remotely and feeling more isolated, and even more so, didn't feel that they could talk to the company about this. So when I had all these findings and all this attention, that's when people told me, Nick, you got to put this in a book. And that's how it came about.
I love that very much. And similar to me, I had never had planned on becoming a published author before my accident. I was actually interviewing for a market analyst position in California. I was a finance major. Things have just transformed, evolved, and I'm very grateful for finding the ability to use my story. At first, I shrugged it off, thought it could only affect me, but then I realized, hey, my story is bigger than me, something that you've admirably done yourself. You've been on the writing journey. You've completed the book. It's many congratulations to you for that. But you've found some difficulties and challenges along the way, I'm sure. What are some advice that you can offer to everyone who's viewing on today?
Well, the best advice I can give, and it's very linked also to mental health and what to do when we're not well there, it is to ask for help. We are surrounded by so many wonderful people who is there to listen and give us a hand and support. So that is the first thing. But what happened in my case, I also was in a full-time job at the time. I knew if I start this book project, I will never finish it. So I needed some support. I was shopping around to have a writing coach. So I actually had the luxury of appointing a writing coach, someone who was checking in with me, who was supporting me, who's putting the structure to the book and so on. And it's also included then the editing, the proofreading, and the layout. So I had it all in one package, and that just made me being able to focus on the content and getting the important message out there and completing it in 1.5 years. I think this would have taken me 10 years otherwise.
You made a great point there for everyone who's a new writer, someone who's just embarking on their writing journey. There are so many pieces to the book. It's not just writing. There's editing, there's proofreading, there's covers, there's uploading to some use Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you name it. Don't be afraid to network. And I challenge you, the worst thing that could happen with a cold message or email is they don't answer and you get some practice. Once I finally got over that hump, everything changed. As you can see, networking right here forged this relationship with Nick and I across the globe. Take chances to grow your book, your practice, whatever you are passionate about. I'd now like to ask you, Nick, how everybody can get in touch with you. How can we find your amazing book?
Well, if you search for Executive Loneliness, it's on Amazon. It's a bestseller in the mental health category. It was topping that chart and so on for a few days. So you will definitely find it on Amazon, Executive Loneliness. You can just look it up there. If you want to contact me, the best is on LinkedIn. I publish most of my articles and so on there as well. If you look for Nick Jonsson, and the way I spell it is NickJonsson, and you're welcome to follow me there as well.
Thank you so much, Nick, for such a powerful episode. You gave your firsthand experiences, as we touched on. You definitely encouraged me to challenge myself to keep striving for greatness in this mental health space. 1.5 years it took him for this book. My first book took even longer than that. It is not an overnight feat, but once the book is out, I think you can agree it opened up some doors for you, got some new conversations, and now he's a bestseller. We have him on the show. Thank you again. And to everyone viewing on, this is episode 3 of 5 before our next 2-week break. We had a good one today, and there will be another valuable episode headed your way next week. Thank you to everyone who continues to support this show and all of my endeavors. I work very hard to provide you with meaningful guests to each topic. See you next Sunday on Writing with Authors.